On the RCKicks show today, we're looking at the Fantom by Kyosho, which is a lovely little re-pan car that came out earlier this year. On today's episode, we're going to be fitting the brand new brushless motor into it, as well as I'm going to be soldering up and fitting an electronic speed controller. Then we'll take it for a bit of a spin and I'll give a review now that I've had the car for a few months. So stay tuned. Hi and welcome to RCKicks. So today we are fitting the Le Mans 480T/S into my Fantom. Now if you haven't seen my video on this motor, I'll put a link up here, as well as a link to building this car if you haven't seen that already, and then you can come back after you've checked out those. You're back? Lovely. Right, yeah, so we're putting in this brushless beautiful motor from Kyosho. Now, in a previous episode, I changed one to a 480S and one is a 480T. So the blue one is a 480S and that's the one I'm going to put in this car. Why? I have no idea. I just thought I'll keep one as stock and then the other I've modified for the show, so we might as well run this one. I honestly have no idea whether it will perform any different to the 480T. When we changed over the bell housing ends and things like that, I didn't see how it would change anything, and the timing looked to be in the same position as well. So I am yet to find out what actually is the difference. S is supposed to be speed and T is supposed to be torque. So in this configuration, it's supposed to be sportier, less torque, but I can't see how that actually is. Maybe it's in, I don't know, maybe it's the colors faster, who knows. So we're fitting this in, but to run this we need an electronic speed controller. Now the electronic speed controller that you would normally put with this is the Kyosho Le Mans, what is it called, 60 amp, and it is a 240S electronic speed controller. Now currently they're getting difficult to get hold of, as well as all Kyosho parts seem to be getting difficult to get hold of, and they retail for, oh let me just check, I had the prices up already, and you are looking at £81.98, and that was on Model Sport. It's out of stock, but they're looking at £82. Now I went for this. This is a Performance Racing P1 Control, and these retail for currently £48. That's £34 less. And what you don't know is it's the same electronic speed controller. Shh. The only difference between this and the Kyosho one, which is almost double the price, is it's not in bling chrome color and it doesn't say Kyosho on it. Apart from that, it is exactly the same. Same chassis, same stats, everything. Even has the two holes in the bottom where you screw it to the top plate of the Fantom. So I decided to go with this, just save myself a few quid, and also I could get hold of one of these. I picked this one up from L&L Models, but you can get them all over the place, so check around. But yeah, what a saving, and it's exactly the same. So I didn't see any problem. The only difference is you need to solder up the A, B and C on here, and I also need to check decide what battery connector I'm going to do, so we've got to solder those up, but that's no big deal. I honestly can't remember if you have to do the same for the Kyosho one. You probably do, so there we go. There's two little holes on here which I have no idea what for. I don't know if they're screw mount holes. I will look through the instructions and see. You do need the cable that goes from the electronic speed controller to the motor, which for some reason, for all the money that Kyosho are selling these, you don't get in the box. But luckily I have one, so as long as it can stretch between this and the motor, it should be fine. But being it's a small car, I would think so. Right, let's remove the old electronics and then we'll be right back and we'll solder this up. Now I'm not changing the setup I had because I wasn't happy with it, and I can highly recommend, if you have a Fantom, to go with a quick run 1060 and a mega formula motor. Obviously trying to find that motor is actually difficult, so the specifications are it's a 22x2 and it has a maximum RPM of 22,000, so you can see it's a pretty quick motor. But if you can find another motor that's the same specification, it is a lovely setup and give you well over 35 miles an hour.
Now I was lucky enough to find a brand new mint Mega Formula motor, and you'll be looking at £30 up to £60 for a motor like this.
So taking the old electronics out doesn't take very long at all. Right, next, what I'm going to do is fit the electronics and then we're going to solder them up. I think that I can have the motor facing upwards, so it should be nice and easy to solder directly onto them while it's in the car, because it will be held nice and tight. Otherwise you'd have to do it outside the car and then try and fit it all, but then you might have to run the wires. So for this installation, I think I'm going to mock it up, make sure I can actually solder it where it is, and then we'll solder it while it's in the car. If it turns out that that's not the case, then I'll take them out and we'll solder them separately and then put them in afterwards. Right, let's keep going. I found the cable that goes between the motor and the electronic speed controller. Seems to be long enough, and I've put some heat shrink on it just to protect it, because there is a chain spinning in the car and we don't want any rubbing or anything like that, and there's lots of little tiny cables. So hopefully that's going to be all right. Okay, right, let's mock it up and put it into the car first.
Fitting the brushless motor is a little bit tight. I found out that you can actually get the pinion on without taking the tyres off. It's just a little bit tight. As this electronic speed controller has the same chassis as the Kyosho one, it has dedicated mounting points on the top plate. Fitting it is nice and easy. The only downside is the electronic speed controller is upside down, so looking at the LED light to get the status is a little bit difficult. So this is how I solder up my DIN connectors. The first thing I want to do is put some solder onto the tabs themselves. Now I use the crocodile clip holding mechanism, as it makes my life so much easier and gives me both hands free, and it stops me from burning myself. Before you solder the DINs to the electronic speed controller, you must remember to put the cap and the heat shrink over the cables first, otherwise you'll solder it up and have to desolder it. Now all we need to do is heat up the tab, place the wire on it, and it will bond together nice and simple. Give the joint a few seconds to cool down before you slide the heatsink over. Take a heat source, something like a lighter or a heat gun, and warm up the heat shrink. I like to use heat shrink as it gives you an extra layer of protection from any shorting. Once that's done, simply slide up the back mounting plate and connect it up to the DIN's connector itself, and you are done. Soldering the brushed motor is kind of the same, just a little bit harder because you have to be a bit more careful because you don't want to damage the motor. What I'm doing is just heating up the tabs and then floating some solder into the joint. As I didn't want to trim down my motor cables, I'm coming in from the opposite direction. It's the same principle. You heat up the mount, wait for the cable to get hot, and it will bond together. Repeat this on all 3 times. Just make sure that you have no short connections between the motor chassis or each individual tab. Once all your soldering's done, it's best to just check everything and make sure everything's working before you do the final pull ties. Otherwise you'll tie everything up, realise you have a problem, and then have to snip them all off again.
There you go, I got the electronics in the car. Pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of room, so you have to be a bit careful trying to get all your cables through. Now, if you were racing this or you were going to leave these electronics in it, definitely, then you would cut all your wires down to get rid of all this extra slop. But as I move my electronics around now and again, I don't like to cut them down in case I've tried to put it in a different car later on and then I have to resolder and it all looked bodgy. So yours will probably look better than mine, but it's all working. Now, when you fit this electronic speed controller, which is exactly like the Kyosho one, you have to change some things. It's set by default to only go forward. Reverse is not there, and there's no drag brake either. So to do that, you do need a card, but you can do it with the setup button on the side of this switch. Now, you have to follow a procedure to get into the training mode, and then you have to select which one of the items that you want to change. Then you have to set it, change it, and then save it. So it is a bit of a faff, but if you follow the instructions step by step, do one at a time, you can get it done. And I've done it now, and it just goes into reverse as well as forward. Now, it's absolutely pouring it down today, so I can't really take it for a drive, but I've got this newfangled dangled gizmo that I treated myself to, and it's a tachometer. So I put on the reflective coat on the wheel, and we spun it up to have a look to see what kind of RPMs I'm getting. Now, once I did the maths, it was coming in a bit low, so I'm going to go through the maths with you to see whether I'm making a mistake or not. But as soon as it dries out, hopefully I can take it out, but I'm hoping it's not as slow as I think it is. Now, when it was running on the, where is it now? When it was running on the Mega Formula motor, I maxed out at 37 miles per hour, which was fantastic for this car. Now, the maths are as follows. Now, my reader was reading that it was rotating the wheels 3,789 times per minute. I measured the circumference of the wheel, and it was 17 centimeters. So we times 17 by 3,789 revolutions per minute, and that gives us 64,413 centimeters. That's the distance traveled. Now we will times that, 64,413 centimeters a minute. We will divide that by 100 to get the meters, and that's 644.13 meters per minute. We'll times that by 60, that gives us 38,647 meters per hour. We'll divide the 38,647 meters by 1,000, so to get kilometers, and that gives us 38.6 kilometers an hour. Now, if you convert the kilometers into miles per hour, that's 38.64 kilometers is 23.98 miles per hour. So pretty much 24 mile an hour. So I'm getting 24 mile an hour as a guesstimation, whereas it was doing 37 before on the same pinion and everything. So something's not quite right. Probably my maths. I did the test a few times, and I was getting the correct RPM. So I'm not sure. But on another episode, when it's a bit drier, I will run it again, and we will see with my GPS exactly what it does. I hope it's not dropped all the way from 37 mile per hour down to 23 mile per hour, because it was perfect on that brush motor, but I can't believe that's the case. So there you go. Right, that's pretty much it. I can highly recommend this electronic speed controller, but if you want to get the card, order it at the same time, but you can make do. There's one thing you can't change without the card, and that is your BEC voltage. It's set by default to 6 volts. If you want to go to 8.4 volts, you need the card, so then just be mindful of that. Anyway, thanks very much. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Unfortunately, I cannot drive this round the Bugrat track because it's grass, so I need to go and do some speed runs with it, but I'm hoping it's a little bit higher than that. Thanks very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Check out one of these videos for some more RC fun.